This is a video uh, as an informal introduction to members of the hemp industry, and particularly the political action committees that are located in each of the states within the United States. I hope this is information that will stimulate you to realize how powerful the seeds of your product are in supporting normal health. It's against the law in the United States to treat a disease or a syndrome or abnormal condition and represent it to improve health. It's against the law, but more comprehensive nutrition, which the hemp seed powder is an example of, supports normal biochemistry and physiology. And that's what I will be emphasizing. And I will give you some background. And now we will go to the first PowerPoint presentation that I have. This is to point out that my name is Harley Reginald McDaniel, MD, and I left high school and went to college and got a double major in chemistry and biology in 1958, and I had a minor in history. I took 18 to 21 hours every semester while in college. But more important, I have in goal, which I will put here periodically, something in goal that I think is important. I was an extern during the summers at Dow Chemical Company in Freeport, Texas, at the Beasley Research Center. The importance of this is I learned things called polymer chemistry, P-O-L-Y-M-E-R, meaning poly units hooked together chemistry. And at the Beasley Research Center, we took gases and liquids with high pressure and temperature, catalysts and rare earth metals to modify the reactions to make different types of plastics. Some were rigid for containers and other very thin, like your sacks that you get at the grocery store. But you could have these different characteristics by hooking molecules together. The importance of this is each cell in the human body, as I will attempt to explain to you as simply as possible, is each cell is a ultra micro little chemical plant run by essentially a biocomputer that is called genes or DNA, that there's a little factory in each cell and multiple, actually 3 major assembly line steps that I'll outline to you. I also, when I went off to medical school, I spent about 2 years working on a PhD in cellular physiology, and that's the study of how cells work. That's how our body's health in everyday life is all centered in the activities of biochemistry and physiology of the cells. Then I got my MD degree in 1962 and started my first pathology residency at Parkland Memorial Hospital, then went into the Army and was at a regional reference pathology laboratory from 62 to 65. Then I came back to Parkland, finished 2 pathology residencies in anatomic and clinical pathology. Then I was a regional satellite hospital pathologist for about 30 years. During that time, I not only taught pathology at the State Medical School in Fort Worth, but was on the clinical faculty at Southwestern Medical School, and I became a visiting professor of clinical design at the University of Miami Miller School of Medicine in Miami, Florida. I should put in goal, at 2000, I worked for about a year with an attorney in the province of Alberta, Canada, where it's not generally known that the provinces in Canada are stronger than the central government in Ottawa. And in Alberta, they did an analysis of what they had in their province that would be an asset on the world market. and that's important that I share with you eventually. The next slide is, I don't want you to think that I just know everything, but this is a list of 11 different academic institutions that were hired on contact research by Carrington Laboratories, where I was asked to be a consultant science and medicine support. And they were developing experiments that the Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, requires for a research project for Carrington Laboratories that was about 10 minutes from my office that I'm talking to you from in Irving, Texas, that was attempting to develop a new antiviral drug from the active ingredients from the aloe plant. And this represents over 50 investigators with over 200 years of academic training beyond a college degree. I'm talking about MD, PhD, dental degree, doctor of veterinary medicine, and individuals that were graduate students working on their PhDs and master's degrees. At this point, I want to stop and acknowledge that you probably, as individuals that go out and plant seed and raise hemp seed plants, are sick and tired of city slickers and people who have gone off to college, don't know anything about farming, confronting all the challenges of rainfall, heat and cold, and the hard work of the farm. And I suspect you've had all you want to hear advice or guidance from college-trained urban people that don't know a thing about farming. So I would like to bring to you someone that you might listen to. So if you'll give me a moment to bring someone in here to do this. And if I can put this on pause, now I'll go to the next slide. Well, let me say this and then go to it. Now I hope that I have assumed a position that you might be willing to listen to somebody about that might know something about being a hemp farmer. And I will go to the next slide, but I will point out some of the past that for till I was 32 years old, after graduating from high school, I was in formal academic training. I grew up, and I hope you will consider me, as my mother called me, Reggie McDaniel instead of Dr. McDaniel. And I grew up on about 150-acre farm where we raised cotton, corn, maize, hay, pigs, chickens, and hogs in Abbott, Texas from about 1946 to 54. For 4 years, I was a member of the Future Farmers of America, and I had a year of vocational agriculture training in 1952, which was very interesting. And during this period of time, I fed 10 beef calves from 1950 to 1954. In doing this, I learned that to maximize your profit, you need to buy all your feed at the time of harvest, store it, and feed it until it's time to take them to the market. And I had 4 beef calves in the last year, and projected profits with the market and all. I was going to make enough money to pay for my freshman and sophomore year in college. However, this was my first experience with the federal government and its agricultural affairs. In 1954, the federal government was impressed by lobbyists that the price of beef was too high, and so they passed wide open imports from Argentina and New Zealand And overnight, the prices dropped 50%, and I was losing money on my 4 calves. So that was I call the first experience with what the federal government can do to you. And of course, you have had your experiences with our federal government. Now, significantly, in 1985, after I'd been for over 20 years a community pathologist, I was asked to be a consultant to Carrington Laboratories of Irving, Texas, that had raised over $20 million to develop a new antiviral drug from aloe vera leaf gel. Aloe vera plantations are a significant part of the agricultural life of Texas. And rapidly, I found out that all pharmaceutical activity is heavily regulated by the U.S. government. And it's a long story, but I got on the FDA's Rolodex in January of 1986, for I had conducted a study in AIDS patients that was successful, that the active ingredient from the aloe plant blocked all symptoms of this viral infection. And this was done under a law of the state of Texas, which changed January the 1st, 1986, but I started and completed it within Texas before December the 31st. And this antagonized the FDA, that I was warned I would never get off of their blacklist. Anyway, in this research, which I gave the slide of the institutions and the over 50 investigators that we developed, not only was the active ingredient from the aloe gel preventive of any type of virus infection, a whole host of animal viruses, plant viruses, and even a panel of human viruses were shown to prevent infection. If infection was already started, it would immediately block the viral activity. And in proper models, it showed that the viral proteins were markedly eliminated from the cells, along with all evidence of this viral infection. And in fact, it boosted the body's innate immunity to a level that all viruses, bacteria, fungus, tuberculosis, and even from orphanages in Africa, we found out children with chronic malaria quit having fever, chills, red cell destruction, got off of their deathbeds, went back to school, began to grow, and they reported they excelled in athletics. We found out that all these benefits were repeatable, and that is a gold standard in any type of benefit to health. There was a time when science was not biased or political, that it was believed that science seeks the truth, the fact of events and phenomena. No slouch in medical and science history. Sir Isaac Newton said, science seeks to understand the mind of God. And he was speaking of the creative, organizing, engineering power in the universe that is the source of the oldest and most persistent mystery to all human beings. What I'm going to share with you, I hope simply and rapidly, is that it's not a new idea. That is more optimal nutrition is ancient insight and guidance. For example, in the Hebrew scriptures, Ezekiel 47:12, from at least 5,000 years ago, it states at the end of speaking of the tree of life and the benefits of fruits and vegetables for nutrition for man, it ends with the leaves of the tree shall be for medicine in the King James Version of the Bible. If you didn't get it from 5,000 years ago, in the New Testament, Revelations 22:2 speaks of the water flowing through from the Holy of Holies in the temple out to the gardens and orchards, and that they produce monthly. And then it ends with these words from 2,000 years ago: the leaves of the trees shall be for the healing of the nations. It's kind of hard to get ahead of that. And I want to point out that what we have to offer and what you have to offer with your hemp plant, and particularly its seeds. And you know already the benefit of the oil from hemp, that you support health, normal, good health. And I call what this technology is personal, preventive, and interventional health management. The other thing that we provide is that anybody has a health problem, they've got a wealth problem. Heaven forbid, in this day and time, anybody in your family has to go to the hospital. You can wipe out in a week an entire life savings. Pardon me. But the World Health Organization keeps up with health trends of the world and all the members of the United Nations. And the United States is #1 in health costs. And the latest figures are 10,300 per citizen per year, and it's rapidly increasing. In addition, they use a form to apply to all the nations for quality of life. And the last time this was done, the United States came in number 35th in quality of life and #1 in expense. So we're talking about a significant thing, that if the hemp industry can impact this, it doesn't take a whole lot of brain power and knowledge to realize something is seriously wrong in what is being practiced in our society. The next thing you have to experience, not only is health and wealth improved, but when you help somebody improve their economic status, their social status, and their health status, they will come to you in tears of appreciation. And much like the Bible says, to love thy neighbor as thyself, this is extremely rewarding in a dimension that is beyond material things, to the gratification that you can get from what you can provide to others. A short history of this aloe research started for me in 1985, and a few years earlier in the 1980s by Carrington Laboratory. As we proved that there were mechanisms in nucleic acids or the genes or DNA that control host defense against all infections. And as I told you before, all viral and other infectious agents were blocked, stopped, and cleared. Now, in this new drug application, that's what NDA stands for with the FDA, all our work from all these institutions and these highly educated investigators, we were thrown out because there was no toxicity whatsoever in phase 1 FDA testing. That is pharmaceutical heresy. The father of pharmacology, Paracelsus, about 500 years ago, the most famous statement was, all drugs are poisons. The benefit depends on the dose. We were doing wonderful things to support normal health. And I, again, want to emphasize, we don't treat, cure, or mitigate disease with improved nutrition. All we do is support the normal biochemistry and physiology through optimal nutrition, supporting cellular synthesis of bioactive molecules that carry on the biochemistry of life. The next problem we had with the FDA was every deviation from normal improved, whether it was physical or mental deviations from normal health. This was a second strike of heresy in the pharmaceutical drug area, because I didn't realize it before getting involved in this. Medicine and the FDA are organized one drug, one disease. Very rapidly, you're aware that we don't use antibiotics to treat mental illness. We don't use psychotropic drugs for mental illness to treat cancer. We don't use cancer drugs to treat infections. One drug, one disease. Another thing that was against this that they didn't admit is that this was very economical. Using nutrition is the most economical approach to management of supporting normal health. And actually using nutrients compared to in-patent new drug is like incredibly cheaper, cheap as dirt, so to speak. Fortunately, in 1994, a new law was passed in the United States called the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act. And it established the new dietary supplement industry. And this gave us a new insight. What we had found in the aloe plant was utilized in the biochemistry of normal health, and whereas drugs interfere with engineering and design of life to block symptoms so long as you take the drug. What we were providing was what the cells need to move the biochemistry and physiology to the normal zone to correct the problem. So this is how the active ingredient of the aloe plant came to be. And I want to emphasize again, that this is not a new idea. Going to Sir Isaac Newton's quote, what I'm sharing with you is God's plan for health and healing. If you look at the book of Daniel 1, you will find that the Hebrews were slaves in Babylonia, and King Nebuchadnezzar, as stated in the first few chapters of Daniel 1, that he noticed that the young Jewish men were very strong and robust and adept, and he wanted them to be in his service. And he said, come and eat at the king's table and have the finest foods and wines and meats that can be gathered. And they said, no, no, no. We just want water and fruits and vegetables. Oh, no, we want you to have the best. And they said, well, let's do a test, it says there. And in fact, the young Jews on a vegetarian diet were much stronger, had more endurance, and recovered from fatigue. That is well documented from nearly 5,000 years ago. Also in Genesis, the oldest part of the old Hebrew scriptures, in 129 after creation, it states, I give you the herbs and seed-bearing plants. For you it shall be meat in the King James Version. Because I have given this lecture to so many vegetarians and vegans, they kind of gag on that, for you it shall be meat. So I have gone to rabbis, not just any rabbi, but those that study the ancient scriptures. And I say, is that what the original Hebrew stated in the scrolls? And they kind of shake their head and said, that's great poetry and imagery. They wanted to get across how important this was. And the original translation would be more like, for you it shall be sustenance. And sustenance is a much broader word, and that's what we're talking about. And I mentioned before about Ezekiel and Revelation. So this is well documented from being a long time ago, and it provides what I call the unified field theorem of health and healing as a means to personal, preventive, and interventional health management. Now we'll seek to give you a glimpse of the incredible scientific organization and logic that is present in all forms of life, not only animal and human life, but the engineering design of life is a constant. It's reproducible. It's in the plant kingdom. And in fact, is the DNA in plants and the DNA in animals are exactly the same molecules that I'll be showing you that have the code of life information coded in it, much like the coding you have in your cell phone or your computer that has a language there. and that what I will show you that a supply of improved nutrient molecules optimally support the biochemistry in the human life. And you got to ask, is that a miracle? Well, probably not. Now, I have here a periodic table of elements of the plant and animal kingdom. And in fact, every analysis of bodies in space and on Earth and all life is somewhere these nutrient element molecules are present in here. When you look at this, I don't want you to be confused, because in my hand, I have a artist palette. And you're aware that whether it's painting by the numbers or great artists like Leonardo da Vinci that has painted works of art that have lasted ages, they start out with, on this palette, the primary colors are red, yellow, and blue. And for mixing these, you can make every color that you might use in making a great work of art. Well, the creative power in the universe, which is undeniable in all its organization of the planets and what's going on in a leaf of grass, a blade of glass, or a leaf on a tree, or a cell in an animal or a human, it utilizes one of these little packets of nutrients here. And the simplest here is hydrogen, which has a atomic number 1, and it has 1 electron. Into the more complex, you get to uranium, and it's 238, and you have 238 electrons. But each of these has a unit of energy in it, which I will be trying to stress before we get through. Now, you don't want to be a biochemist or a geneticist or molecular biologist, but I'm trying to give you some analogies to understand that this is what the creating power in the universe used as its palette to create everything we see and experience. On this thing, there are 10 elements that make up over 90% of animals or the human body. And in college, you'll learn that they're called C. Hopkins Cafe. The C stands for carbon, the H for hydrogen, the O for oxygen, the P for phosphorus, the K for potassium, the I for iodine, the N for nitrogen, the S for sulfur, and the Ca for calcium, and the Fe for iron. Those 10 elements out of the 106 here are primarily what make up the human body. And when I was showing these primary colors in these elements, 90% of those 10 are in these 4. And I use hydrogen as similar to the red in the primary colors, the carbon to the blue, the nitrogen to the yellow, and the oxygen to zero or white, which modifies the strength of each of these. But more importantly is that the carbon atom there is the core chain in the structure of amino acids, fatty acids, and in carbohydrates. The sugars are the monosaccharides that are particularly high in plants. I want to go now to the next slide and to point out that this hydrogen, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen are the primary elements that make up the structure of DNA or the structure of genes. They're only made of these 3 primary elements. And this is the structure, if you'll see the carbon centers of them, chains here. And the adenine, the guanine, the thymidine, and the cytidine are a powerful code in the DNA chains of our genes. And I want to go one step further with this, that each cell is like an ultra micro factory. We talked about Dow Chemical Company in Freeport. It only made less than 10 products. But our cells, depending on which of the 30,000 genes are activated on an assembly line, I will show you in just a minute, you will find that they take amino acids, fatty acids, sugars or monosaccharides, elements, vitamins, minerals, and plants molecule nutrients made in the plant kingdom, and hook them together to make bioactive molecules to carry out the biochemistry of life. The blue bands in each of this, I want you to think of much like the code in your cell phone or your computer. The blue is like the hardware of desoxyribose, the sugar structure, the double helix, one side being the maternal genetic influences, the other side being the paternal or father's genetic history of that family. And this is just the same thing, showing the molecules, the sugar molecules in the helix, and the nucleic acids that I mentioned before, the cytosine, guanidine, adenine, and thymidine are set in here. And you can look at it again. These are the molecular structures of the sugars. And then this you can think of like volumes of a book of instructions in the library of life, because the instructions for the cell to make bioactive molecules that control cellular synthesis is all written in this. And you have 46 chromosome chains in each cell in the body, which this is an example that I'm not pulling your leg. This can all be shown. This is established science. You can take one white cell and add a chemical to it, colchicine, and the chromosomes will pair up. And with fluorescent dye, you can see them and you can photograph this. Then you can cut out each one of these and make what's called a karyotype of what all 46 or 23 pairs make up. You hear that advertised on the TV. Well, this is a genetic history, and this is the longest chain to the shortest. And we know right here where we say X and Y that this was a white cell from a male, because if it was female, you would have two X's right here, but here's a tiny little Y. And so this is a male. So what I've been telling you can be shown. Furthermore, here's an electron micrograph taken up to about 100,000 magnifications. And here is the nucleus where all the chromosomes are. And you can't see them, I mean, it's detail, but I'm going to show you a cartoon that will explain this a little, but you'll see round structures in here that are the first stage of assembly line in the cell called a ribosome. And in the ribosome, the instructions from the nucleus tells you which amino acids to put together to start making a chain of protein, or the peptides that are shorter that eventually become proteins. In addition, the protein fragments will cluster around endoplasmic reticulum membranes, and there they get sugars added to start glycoproteins. Glyco stands for sugar from the Greek, or sweet. And then it's finished off in what these J-shaped things here called the Golgi, which is essentially the finishing stage in the assembly line of life. Now, here is a cartoon to try to make what I just showed you a little more simple. We have a model of a cell here, and this is the ribosome, first stage of synthesis, where the amino acids are hooked together under instructions of the gene, whichever one is activated. And then it goes over to the endoplasmic reticulum, and here sugars are added to the end of the protein. And then it goes to the Golgi to be finished off to make all the structure function molecules of the body. Well, this is from Annual Reviews of Biochemistry 1985. And in this review, it refers to over 300 published papers that over the decades, all put together, describes this assembly line and how it works. Well, the reason I was so excited over this is because in our Aloe research, we found that the principal molecule in the aloe that was doing all the good benefits was mannose sugar. And in this paper, you find out this is the biochemistry of what is going on in these different structures. And you will see 9 molecules that are blue right here in 3 chains. And all those blue molecules are mannose sugars hooked to a peptide. And then you can see here that on the surface of the cell, this is a domain for cell-to-cell communication and harmony. We have trillions of cells in our body, and they've got to all work together in harmony and unison to carry out a healthy quality of life. And this domain is so important to get the cells working together. A good example of when this is not working well and breaking down is when there's a mutation in one of these DNA chains that causes malignancy, and a cell begins to reproduce itself like a rebel in a society wants to take on and change society or the government. And these new malignant cells of cancer crowd other cells, try to take over their nutrition, and are destructive. And would you believe that there is information in here to work through this domain to overcome this rebel cell line and eradicate this disruption among the trillions of cells? So this also is an example of the biochemistry of not only of the mannose, but how at each step, and depending on which gene is activated, different amino acids, different fatty acids, different sugars, different elements, different vitamins are hooked together, including special molecules made in the plant kingdom to make bioactive molecules to normalize the biochemistry and physiology of the body. And I hope that this makes some sense to you, and to try to, again, make it more understandable. What is going on in the cell is much like a few miles, like 2 miles from where I'm sitting, there's a General Motors assembly plant. At that assembly plant, rail cars and trucks bring in parts. Inside the assembly plant, engineers have given them the instructions of how to hook all these parts together, and out the assembly line comes complete vehicles that work and look right and will function. Now, that's exactly what each cell in your body, the trillions of them, do. For parts, when we open our mouth and have a meal, we start chewing, and enzymes are released by the salivary glands along with fluid, water, to dissolve nutrient molecules and start taking big molecules and make them smaller. Goes down in the stomach, and acid is added, and it begins to chop up big molecules. And then along in the intestine, other enzymes are released that will take big hunks of fat and reduce them to fatty acids. Will take chains of meat and reduce it to amino acids, that will take starches and reduce them to sugars, and they dissolve into the serum phase of the blood in the capillaries of the intestine, and then are pumped around by the heart in the blood in the liquid phase or serum to deliver parts to the assembly line I just showed you that's in each cell. And depending on what the needs are and what instructions have been sent to the cell's chromosomes, it might be insulin that is made, or a hormone if it's in the adrenal gland or the ovary or the testis. A hormone would be dissolved in the serum and then pumped around in the blood to other cells that need this. Or if in sugar metabolism, it might be insulin made in the islet cells of the pancreas to manage the sugar. So I'm trying to get across to you how nutrition works and how important it is in your body. Now, To summarize all of this, here in Texas, for about 40 years, there was a PhD at the University of Texas by the name of Roger J. Williams. He wrote over 10 books on the power of nutrition to support normal health. And in his book, Nutrition Against Disease in 1971, he wrote and stated that all my years of research, all my books can be summarized in one basic sentence. The human body heals itself, and nutrition provides resources to accomplish the task. I can tell you that I never knew Dr. Williams. He died before I ever got involved in this. He died in his early 90s at a time when a lot of people were dying in their 55s to 65s. That suggests maybe he knew something others didn't know. But only thing I can add to this, that the human body not only heals itself, but it reproduces itself. It defends itself with general host defense. It balances the biochemistry within the cells. Everything, even our thoughts and creative activity, is done with nutrient molecules that accomplish the task of everyday normal life. Now I would like to move more specifically to the benefits. If you would Google or go on PubMed, hemp seeds contain all essential amino acids and is particularly high in arginine, and they're in the ideal ratios these amino acids are for good health. They also contain the seeds fatty acids, 3, 6, and 9 carbon links, and it's high in the ALA and the GLA, which are very important in the modern food chain. Why is it important in the modern food chain? Because we have tended, but with an urban society, to have eliminated the family garden and orchard, where the plants grew on soil that had up to 70 trace minerals that optimize the nutrition of the plant. And when you had a family garden or orchard, you didn't go out there and pick it green a week or two before it started to ripen, which now is done. When I was young in about the 1940s, it was only about 2 weeks to a month you could have most fruits and vegetables, because most grocery stores were owned by a local family, and nearly everything they sold came from the growing season within less than 50 miles. And when that growing season was over, they didn't have it again until the next year. Well, now you can go down to these chain grocery stores and you can have watermelon, raspberries, blueberries, all the fruits and vegetables 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. How do they do this? Well, the commercial growers follow the growth cycle of different regions, and they pick the fruits and vegetables while they're green so that you'll have an extended shipping life and shelf life. But when you pick it green, the principal molecule in the fruit or vegetable is chlorophyll. Chlorophyll is not essential to animal life or human life. And so dietary supplements, which we're talking about is a hemp seed to be a source to improve nutrition, is very important in the modern food chain. In addition, there's high in magnesium minerals in the hemp seed, and then there's potassium, sodium, sulfur, very important, calcium, iron, and particularly in the immune system, zinc. In vitamins, there's a lot of E, there's B6, riboflavin, niacin, thiamine, and very important, folate, which is so important in the development of the fetus in the pregnant mother for the nervous system and the brain to properly develop. Also, the hemp seeds are high in fiber, and this helps reduce appetite when you have it in your diet, and it's used to manage to reduce weight. And it also, there's worldwide research going on about the contributions of health the friendly bacteria have in the large bowel. and the long chains of nutrients that are in hemp seed optimize the biochemistry of these bacteria in your large bowel, because those bacteria in your large bowel are taking care of their own health needs. And the serum circulating in the wall of the bowel is in equilibrium with the fluid inside the large bowel and the activity of these bacteria. And so we piggyback in our serum the production of molecules that the bacteria make to protect themselves, and our cells are protected by what these bacteria do. So these are benefits. So again, the hemp seed benefits for normal health are antioxidant molecules. What do we mean by oxidation? Everybody on the farm knows about rust of iron. That's because the 21% oxygen in our environment oxidizes steel and it becomes red rust. Well, our bodies, the mitochondria, produce free radicals, and through nutrition, would you believe that in our genes it's written to make molecules that attach to free radicals and nascent oxygen to keep them from reacting with the membranes in the cell to alter their function. And the worst of all is these free radicals and nascent oxygen can attach to chains of DNA, and this molecule changes the message of the information in the DNA strain and can cause malignancy. So being an antioxidant activity of the hemp seed is great. It's also anti-inflammatory. We read a lot about the damages, particularly with aging, of inflammation in our body. Also, the molecules in hemp seed are neuroprotective, protecting our spinal cord and our brain function. There are autoantibody diseases where our immune system doesn't turn off after exposure to an infectious organism, and antibodies are made that begin to react with our own tissues. And when it attaches to our tissues, it's modified and our immune system reacts against it. And that's how you get lupus and rheumatoid arthritis. And there are over 80 different autoimmune diseases, depending on what tissue the antibody attaches to, that our immune system say, hey, that's not just normal tissue, react against it. And you get inflammatory response and pain and alterations of autoimmune diseases. The nutrients in hemp seed also support optimal cardiovascular system to retard atherosclerosis and stiffening of the arteries and obstruction of the arteries. It's beneficial to the skin, which we sometimes forget is the largest organ in the body, and it protects our internal environment from noxious things in the outside environment. So anything that's beneficial to the skin is very good to protect our body. And then the components in the hemp seed support immune system balance, that when it's appropriate to turn on against the infection, it'll help that. When it's appropriate to turn off so that you don't have autoantibody diseases, that's good too. Now, one of the things that currently is very active in the hemp industry is the development of the CBD oil or hemp oil. And I was very skeptical about this, the claims to reduce pain, but I went into the European literature and found out for years they've been doing research on hemp oil, and found out that in the synapse of the nervous system, which is kind of like a little control box that you have in your electrical system in your business or your home, that the synapse structure is made up of amino acids or proteins, sugars in the structure of it, and also fatty acids. Well, the hemp oil binds to the fatty acid, and when it binds to that, pain stimuli are blocked, at the synapse to keep it from going up to the brain. And so this reduces that. Also, you may be aware that there are strains that have reduced seizures, particularly in children. But there are reports in the literature that hemp seed reduces stress, that it's of aid in post-traumatic stress disorders of GIs coming back from the Middle East, that it's helpful in teenage acne. People having sleep problems, they are better off. It reduces anxiety and spasticity of muscles. People that have the syndrome fibromyalgia have less pain. We talked about the CBD oil. Again, that it's neuroprotective and it's anti-inflammatory. And very important, when people are undergoing chemotherapy for malignancy, it reduces the side effects and toxicities of the damage of these cytotoxic agents used for treatment of cancer. Now, telling you all this good thing about hemp seed that you can find and is available for those that search for it on the web, it's against federal law to inform the public of these hemp benefits, because the Dietary Supplement Act of 1994 in the labeling section, I paraphrase, that only an FDA approved drug can claim to treat, cure, ameliorate a disease, syndrome, or improve an abnormal condition. This is scientifically and in fact in great error. And this law with this statement in it needs to be changed so that the public can benefit from adding hemp seed powder to their diets. I mentioned briefly in the introduction that I spent some time working with an attorney from Alberta, Canada. That province did a major study of what it offered, could offer on the world market that was a benefit to the economy of that province. And one of the things they emphasized was agricultural products. The next thing they realized is that selling agricultural products by the truckload or the barrel, shipload, is very poor return on your investment. That the greatest economic benefit you can reach is to produce products that can be utilized by the public. And they went into great details like how farming from their agricultural products, food bars, and ingredients for smoothies and cereals that are consumed by the public. And that's where the hemp powder in the dietary supplements maximizes the return, economic return on your crop. And that would be a major benefit. And I want to suggest that the political action committees that have been effective in eradicating the federal law that you could not import even hemp seed that could be germinated to the United States was changed. And now there is a infant industry, and that it would be worthwhile to take on the crony capitalism that the drug industry has going with the Food and Drug Administration, or FDA. And I hope that this is a challenge to you to utilize your existing influence to change this law so that the public can be informed of the health benefits. And this could contribute to reducing not only healthcare costs at $10,300 per citizen per year, but to elevate us from 35th in quality of life of the member nations of the United Nations to elevate, because this is an avenue to personal, preventive, and interventional health. Now, if you want more information on what I've shared with you today, I've written a book, The Gift of Primal Provision, and it's about the first 10 years of the research we've done. And then I've written a small syllabus on discovering that the active ingredient from the aloe, another plant product, generates millions of adult stem cells that have incredible restitution properties for correcting deviations from normal health. At this time, I'm trying to write a book that's going to be entitled Sell No Chartered Seed. It's not completed, but I attempt in it to show research over the ages that's in the libraries that supports the reason that I have had reported to me over 800 different deviations from normal, that by optimizing nutrition, homeostasis, or as a word developed by the father of human physiology, Dr. Hans Selye, balance in all biochemical and physiological systems in the body, that normal zone he called homeostasis. Again, we do not treat, cure, or mitigate disease. The mechanism in nutrition is support normal biochemistry and physiology. And this is something that I hope that you will be active in attempting to correct this onerous and terribly in error law. If you wish to contact me, I would prefer that you send me an email, and I have the email address there, capital R MCDANIEL at wellnessquest.org. We have a website, www.wellnessquest.org, and you can know on there that our flagship product, New Eden, which incorporates what I've learned for the last 37 years, put into, built around the active ingredient of the aloe plant to optimize the biochemistry and physiology of life. And our latest version of New Eden contains hemp powder. And I'm active to try to get as many dietary supplement companies as possible to put hemp powder into their product line. I hope that I have not talked over your head or in a manner that you're sick and tired of people that don't know anything about the challenges of going out there and farming and developing a crop. And I wish nothing but the maximal benefits of your efforts to not only grow and market the hemp products, but to develop and make it legal to inform the public of the health benefits of hemp seed powder. Thank you for giving me this time.